Well, I'm going to tell a few more stories about our trips to Mombasa. Everybody that lived up country in the Nairobi and Nakuru and the areas up country would take their vacations and go down to the coast just for a little bit of change of scenery. And in those days, we went out to Africa in 1966, early 1966. The boys, like I said a while ago, were 5 and 6 years old, and we usually took this little dachshund. That she was part dachshund. She had kind of long legs, and her name was Choo Choo, after the choo-choo train. And so we'd always take that dog with us, and we'd have so much fun. And we would drive. Dad was talking about Athi River a while ago. In those days, when you would drive from Nairobi to Athi River, which was maybe, what, 20 miles or so, it wasn't very far, there were a couple of herds of giraffes that lived there. And so we all loved to go because we knew we were going to see the giraffes on the way to Athi River. Well, on down, it was about 300 miles to the coast, and the road wasn't all that good all of the time that we were there. They finally improved it. But there would be elephants along the way when you got into the Tsavo National Park. The elephants, there were signs on the road that said elephants have the right of way. And so there would be elephants crossing. And I remember things that would happen on the road. One time the elephants were crossing and we stopped, and that little dog was sitting like up on the back of the seat, and she'd sit there go, "Ruh, ruh," and the boys would try to keep her, be quiet, Choo Choo, don't you say anything else. Then we'd get her to the coast, and she'd go chase the monkeys up into the palm trees. There were some of them that were leaning over, and she'd run as fast as she can. And then she found the crabs, those little crabs that would make holes in the sand, and the boys would get sticks and make holes. And the crabs weren't there, but Choo Choo would go and dig, 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 dig. So we had a lot of fun on vacations going to the coast. We had some good times, and the owl and the boy, of course, I'm scared of water, so I would just barely tiptoe looking for shells on the edge of the ocean. But when the tide would go out, well, Al and the boys would go out, and they would snorkel and look for shells and get all of those good kind of things. We have quite a shell collection. Then other places that we would go at the game parks, the first time we were out, we couldn't really afford to go very many places. It was real expensive to go to these game lodges. But the second time we were out, we'd have friends that would come to visit. Our rich friends would take us to some of the game parks. And so we went to Treetops, and I always wanted to go to Treetops because I guess when I was about in the 8th or 9th grade, I had read this book called Elephants Arrive at 5:30, and it was written by a famous actress who had visited Treetops. And the Treetops it's a hotel that was built in the trees, and you had to climb up this ladder, and you had a white hunter with a gun that would take you over there, and it was quite a production to get there. But it was built by a water hole, and so the elephants did every day about 5 o'clock. Here they'd come, the whole herd lined up, coming to the water hole to get water. So that was always an interesting place to go. It was really small and it was crowded, and actually it was famous because when Elizabeth became the queen, when her father died, she was actually visiting Treetops when she got word that her father had died, and she became the Queen of England. So it was a very famous place. Another place that we went was the what was the one that
Aberdares?
Yeah, the Aberdares and the Ark were in the Aberdare Mountains up near Nyeri, and the mountains that were the Mount Kenya was in that range. And then there was another mountain range, well, it was Kilimanjaro, was just seemed like it would just rise out of nowhere, almost 20,000 feet. That is the tallest mountain in all of Africa. And there was another game, Amboseli, I think was that game park. And you could stay in these little cabins. And one time when the Steegers were visiting out there with us, well, it was night, and we were in these little cabins, and the elephants were coming across, and we said, Jody, you got to come out of here and look at this. And she was taking pictures of everything, and this elephant was so close, she couldn't even see anything. Oh, my Lord, she said. And we teased her from then on about about her cursing the elephants coming past there. And then I think Tim has some stories about when his Aunt Noreen and her friend Joanne came to visit, taking them into Amboseli and getting stuck. And so that was a whole nother story for Amboseli. Another famous game park that we went to was Ngorogoro Crater. We went into Tanzania, and Tarangire was a tented camp, and that was a lot of fun to do that. In fact, Jim and Kathy, and when Olivia and Jacob were about maybe 4 and 5 years old, came out to visit us just before we left Africa to come home for good. Tim and Kathy you were either in Africa, you were on your way back to Africa as missionaries, I think, at that time. But anyway, Jim and Kathy had not been back, so they came back and brought the kids, and we stayed at that tented camp. And so that was a lot of fun. The Hootens met us coming across from Kenya, and we went there. We went to Masai Mara with the Joneses, and that was another experience with the Jones boys, with Tom and Nancy and Andy and Tommy. And we had some fun times there. Brian Fidley came out to visit us one time, and we went to Lake Manyara where the lions are in the trees, and we got some good pictures. That was a lot of fun doing that. So it was real fun vacation times. The schools were out like for December and April and August. They'd go 3 months to school and have a month off, and so that made for wonderful family vacations. So a lot of the missionaries would just take their kids and go do fun things. So we had a lot of fun things to do. We went back in '82. We lived in Nakuru, outside of about an hour-and-a-half drive from Nairobi, and we were able to get a membership in the Rift Valley Sports Club, and so we had a lot of British friends, and that was a fun place to live. But as a member of the Rift Valley Sports Club, we had reciprocal membership into all of the other clubs around Kenya. So we could go to Nairobi and stay in the club, which was a really big deal, or to Mombasa, and we loved to go there because we could get this delicious lobster thermidor, and we'd be right there on the ocean, and these fabulous air-conditioned rooms, what the British didn't want. They wanted the rooms that had the ocean breeze, so we would stay there. We went up to Mount Kenya to the Nanyuki Club, and several people, when they would come out on safari, would take us to the Mount Kenya Safari Club, which was the most elite of all of the places to visit. But there weren't really animals. There was like a petting zoo kind of thing where there were animals. They took care of some of the animals. So you could see the bongo and some that you didn't always see in the wild. So we had some really fun times at the games parks and having fun in Africa.